Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. Right, tonight I'm going to try it without my normal light because I have got a light beside me. So you'll have to let me know if this is any better. It does look very dark. Let me know. Let me know what you think. I know I haven't done a story in a while. And I'll tell you why. I can't just do these stories for doing them, for the sake of doing them. I can't. I have to watch a story or hear about something and it resonates with me for whatever reason it may be. It could be something very insignificant, but it'll resonate with me and I'll feel like I need to share it. I can't just do a story just for the sake of doing it. Obviously, if there's any you'd like me to look at for you, that's very different. But just one that I'm just putting up, I feel like I need to have some sort of connection with it, whatever. Like I say, no matter how insignificant. And this one's like that, a bit like Kellyanne Bates. This young girl, she's the same age as me. We were born in the same year, obviously. And that piqued my interest as it does if someone's the same age, you're like, oh, you know, it begins an interest. Now, the girl I'm talking about was adopted, and she's had an adopted, I say adopted, you'll see why I'm doing that in a bit. Very, very similar to the Hedonusberg case, this is. She had her adoptive name and it's now back to her birth name. So I'm going to call her that, which is Elsa Garcia. That was the name she was born with, you know, she was given when she was born, and that's the name she's got now. So I'm going to call her Elsa. And I first saw this story on Dr. Phil, believe it or not. And it's just little segments. I didn't see the whole thing. So, of course, I got an interest in it. I started looking around for different sources, the story, and it's just, the more I found out, the more heartbreaking this story was. And like I say, Elsa, she was adopted from a Baptist children's home in Indiana in the USA. And this was in 1978. She was 4 months old, same age as me. And she was adopted by Joseph and Evangeline Combs, and they called her Esther Combs. So that was the name that was used within her adoptive family. Now, the couple at the time didn't think they could conceive naturally. And the same, as it was going through to adopt Elsa, Evangeline conceived, and she went on. I saw 3 siblings. Apparently there could be up to 6. It's a bit sketchy on that, but she did go on to conceive and have more children. Well, if we fast forward, we jump nearly 20 years. Elsa's nearly 20, obviously. And she tries to commit suicide drinking antifreeze. She drinks this cup of antifreeze and she goes and lies down. I know it's odd. And she's rushed to the hospital. She's in a coma for a few days. She comes round, and while she's been in this state from the overdosing on the antifreeze, the doctors notice scar upon scar upon scar on this young lady. And when she comes round, of course, they ask her, and she lies about it for various reasons, from her falling over, a fight with a sibling. You know, she tries to explain these scars away. And because of the extent of how many scars were on her, and I will tell you how many in a second, authorities were notified. Even though she's 19, you know, this girl's very timid, she's very reserved. They didn't believe what she was saying. So the authorities are notified. So to avoid any awkward questions, Joseph and Evangeline ship Elsa off to, did I say that Joseph was he was a minister? He was a pastor, Joseph was. I'm really sorry, I haven't said that yet. So a very prestigious family within the community that I lived in, you know, very well respected. You do see online a video of one of his sermons, you know, very emotional, very passionate. So they ship Elsa off to another pastor. And this pastor, he just knew there was something very wrong with this girl. And he moves Elsa on to, it's actually her uncle, it's Joseph's brother, and his wife. And while there, she started to see what family life, what should be like. And the uncle's wife, you know, slowly gains Elsa's trust. And she's like, you know, what happened? What has happened to you? And she gets Elsa to open up. Now, from the age Elsa could remember, she was classed as the family servant. Yeah, from as young as she can possibly remember. And what came with this is obviously all the chores, you know, cleaning, obviously cooking once she got old enough, you know, all the servant roles. But what also came with this was beatings for not doing the chores as they wanted them to, as quick as they wanted to, or just because they fancied it. Now, Elsa was beaten daily, not just with hands or fists. She was beaten with bats, ropes, chains. She remembers her mum putting her in a high chair, tying her up in the high chair and pushing her down the stairs. This poor child. See, this went on for 19 years. Like I said, she didn't do that cry for help with the answer. I don't think it was cry for help. I think she says in the interview she wanted to wake up in heaven. So 19 years this is spread over. She was sliced with knives, anything they could get hold of. She remembers one specific injury on her arm that has actually started to heal. And Evangeline, because it was both of them, it wasn't just one or the other, it was both. Evangeline walked up and ripped the wound back open, and just stuck it with paper towels and bandaged it. You know, she was never took to a hospital, you know, to have anything done. She was burned. Her hands were held over the cooker. You know, the other injuries were reopened with pliers. You know, real sadist stuff that was going on. She was starved for days at a time. You know, she rarely got to eat. She was thrown so hard, with Evangeline holding her hair, and she said either her arm or her leg, and throwing her, which wasn't an unusual thing. This was quite a commonplace thing, but this one time when she was thrown, her head hit the floor and she knocked her two front teeth out. Evangeline, her mum, it's so hard, because this is a child I'm talking about. She made her pick her teeth back up off the floor and put them back into her gums, the holes, and bite down on them for the next few days to hold them in place. Again, there's a photo where you can see how crooked her teeth were at the time. But yeah, bit down on them to get them back into it. Oh God, her dad, Joe, because if you noticed I've mentioned Evangeline a lot, her dad also took part in the beatings, but he had to go even further because that wasn't obviously enough to do to her. And the sexual abuse actually started when she was 6, and on the Dr. Phil show, she's actually asked if Evangeline knew of the sexual abuse, and she said that once, very early days, I think it was one of the first times she was sat on Joe's lap, and he put her hand onto him, and when Evangeline came in and started rowing with him over it, he said he couldn't feel it because he had jeans on, so she got a beating for that. And from then on, it was simply every time he was giving her a beating, he'd either abuse her and then give her a beating, or, you know, vice versa. You know, this poor girl's life. And that's what I mean, it resonated with me because we are the same age. And when, you know, I remember certain milestones in my life, I vaguely remember being 5 and 6. I remember being 10. I remember being 19, obviously, not that old. But I remember those milestones in my life, and her memories are obviously very, very different to mine. And it's just such a shame. She was homeschooled, so, you know, the authorities were never notified that way. Plus, like I say, he was a pastor. No one questioned him. No one questioned her. They were very well thought of, very high in the community. But one of his favourite tricks with her was to wrap a rope around her neck and swing her behind his back and pull until she'd lose consciousness and she'd wake up on the floor coughing. You know, they were very careful not to go too far. I don't know if it was a deliberate thing not to go too far, or it was pure luck that this girl survived what happened to her. And it sounds so much. It really does. It was like the various stories that I've said, but Kellyanne Bates, you know, a lot happened to that girl, and it's just so hard to get your head around, and it's just awful. So when she opened up, the authorities were involved, and charges were brought to Joseph and Evangeline for child abuse, kidnapping, and rape. And the reason it's classed as kidnapping is because they never officially adopted her, just to, you know, really the kicker. They weren't actually her parents. Whether it wasn't the paperwork weren't folded out, don't forget, this is very, you know, a similar time era to the Head and Nussberg case with Lisa Steinberg. You know, it was very lax back then, you know, and they weren't officially her parents. You know, but with all of this, even with all of this, the prosecution wasn't sure they'd get a conviction, because basically it was just Elsa's word against Joseph and Evangeline. And I keep saying they were very high on the ladder, you know. So how dare she do this? And her siblings, who were witness to all of this, testified. And that's like I say, I only saw 3 testify, so I'm not too sure where the others come into play. Were they younger? I'm not sure. But they all claimed it was rubbish. They'd never seen anything. It was, you know, it weren't true. The parents were golden. You know, so she had a lot against her. Well, there was a chance discovery while this was going on, of a trash bin outside the Combs house. And in there were family photos. Very careless of them just to throw them in the boot, but they did, fortunately for Elsa and the prosecution. And it showed these early photos, and of course Elsa's in them. And there's one, she's so young, she's like 5, 6, 7 maybe, and she's got massive bandages over her little hands, where it tied in with her saying she was burnt with the cooker. Black eyes, you know, photo after photo of this poor girl with black eyes, all tying in with her story, which was a great find for the prosecution. You know, it meant they could come forward with that. And also, with this evidence, witnesses started to come forward who obviously felt bad for not saying anything. And the one guy, you do see the trial, and the one guy was asked, you know, who was she in the family that you would recognise? And he said, well, Josie said she was sent from God to be a servant, and he was teaching her to be a servant. You know, and witnesses came forward. You know, I always saw a few myself in the trial that you say. Just basically saying, yeah, this poor girl just had the worst life, but they didn't know what to do, which is really upsetting. It's really upsetting to know that there was people, you know, like Baby Pete, there's Victoria Klimbia, there's so many stories that I've done where Daniel Palka, you know, where it seems people could have helped, people could have stepped in and said something or reported it or done something. And through various reasons that I've done in these stories, this one being they were just too scared of the authority this family had. You know, it's just such a shame. Now, the scars that I was talking about of Elsa, because obviously they have doctors come up to, for the prosecution, to say how she was when they found her, when she was admitted, and they counted and brought up diagrams, 410 injuries to Elsa's body. 410. They said they'd never seen anything like it in their lives. In their whole career, it's just nothing they'd ever seen. And when they brought the diagrams of, you know, in front and the back, it was just covered. It was just covered. The pictures were just covered, head to toe. This poor girl, just scarred from, like I say, head to toe. It's just awful. And Elsa's testimony itself, again, you do see snippets of it. You don't see the whole thing, but you see snippets of it. And it's so upsetting. It's just really upsetting because she's talking about it. She is upset when she's saying it, but it's kind of matter of fact. You know, she was saying that when she was older, they used to bring her into the gym. You know, they had a big house, you know, and they had a gym, and they used to tie her up there and just take turns beating her until they get too tired. And then the next one would start, you know, swing set chains, you know, hammers. It didn't matter what it was, just what they could get hold of, just for nothing. Doing a chores too slow. To be honest, there wasn't a lot of reasons put forward, so I don't think, even as rubbish as the reasons would be, I don't even think there was any. To be honest, it was really, really upsetting. But like I say, Joseph himself, Evangeline didn't go into the witness box to give her, I suppose, her statement of account. She didn't do that, but Joseph did, and the kids did. And just, how could she do this? You know, I don't know where it's come from. You know, he wasn't very convincing, I've got to say. I can see when you saw him do his sermon, and there was a video of that, it was very passionate, and his own defence trial for doing the most unspeakable, heinous things to this girl, there was no real feeling in it. I don't know if he thought, you know, I'm too powerful, this is just ridiculous, it's going to blow over. I don't know, but I didn't get that he was overly concerned. But luckily, it only took the jury 3 hours. 3 hours, that's one of the quickest I've heard in the stories I've done, to find them both guilty on all charges. So, again, I do say it a lot, gotta give it to the American justice system. Joseph Combs got 106 years, which is life. That's what you should get. Never to see the light of day again. Evangeline Combs, 65 years. She's never getting out. She's not getting out in her lifetime. And you just know, if this was a British case, I don't think I'd be putting those sentences across to you. I don't. You know, even if it was said they'd get life. Some of the stories I've got, yeah, they get life, but they're free in 15 years. You know, some of them maybe 18 years, 20, but they get to go on and live their life. And that's what I do. You know, I didn't mention when I did the Joel Steinberg story, heading of Spurg, Lee Steinberg. That one I wasn't as impressed with, because he did only get, I think it was 17 years. So that one did surprise me, although a very long time, don't get me wrong, but what he did, I would have expected one of these kind of sentences, because that was in America. But, you know, yeah, 106 years and 65 years. Wow. Sorry. Yeah, 106 years. Now, when this sentencing was filmed, Elsa wanted to do a statement to her parents, which Joe, you didn't say, I think he left for. He didn't really want to hear it. And Evangeline, while Elsa was telling this statement, just stone. Utter stone. No reaction whatsoever. And it was a really upsetting statement. She was saying, you know, I just wish you'd love me. All I ever wanted all my life was for you to say you loved me. You know, I don't know what I could have done. I'm sorry. You know, really heart-wrenching, really, really heart-wrenching. And, you know, and there was nothing. There was nothing. There was obviously no care for this girl ever. You know, you wouldn't have done that anyway, but to sit there and listen to this girl pouring her heart out about how all she wanted was love and care from you, and nothing, there was nothing on her face. It was heartbreaking to watch. But now Elsa, when the court trial had finished, I think it was 22, 23, and she's been thrown into the normal world, if you like, and she doesn't know how to live in the normal world. She's had no experience. She's only known violence, sexual abuse. You know, I don't know if she was thrown to the wolves. I think that's the wrong thing to say, but she was an adult. You know, she went on to have relationships, but they were abusive relationships. She became addicted to alcohol. It's very sad. You know, but she did have a daughter through one of these relationships. And she says that it was this daughter that taught her how to love, that taught her that she could give the love that she'd always wanted to receive. And in turn, obviously, you receive that back from your child, don't you? So, now in a most up-to-date interview, she does say it's taken every bit of these 20 years, because she'd be 41 now. And it's taken every bit of these 20 years to get through what she went through. You know, she had a lot of nightmares. She had, you know, the night terror. It's took the 20 years to try and get her life into some sort of normality. She advocates for children to be, you know, noticed, when basically saying, if you even get an inkling, isn't it better to be wrong than, and have reported it, and be proved wrong, and it's been a misunderstanding, than to not report it and then be proved right down the line, when you hear, you know, a child has been hurt or killed, or, you know, she's advocating that. She's like, please speak up. Children don't feel they can. In her case, she kind of didn't know any different. So, although she did say that once Josie did shout at one of the other children, didn't even raise his hand to them, shouted. And apparently Evangeline did say, you can do what you like to her, but you won't treat my children like this. You know, such a change in the woman, you know, fiercely defensive of these other children, and yet she felt nothing for this girl and child. She adopted 4 months old, you know, so young, and she felt nothing for her. So Elsa really didn't know any different life, although she'd have seen the other children being treated a certain way. She felt that she shouldn't be treated any different, and, you know, there could be kids out there going through this that don't know what's going on, is wrong. and that's where an adult should be speaking up for them. You know, and this is what she puts across, and for the past 20 years, she's kind of 100% believed that the punishment she got, she deserved. She felt that she could have behaved better, she could have done her chores better, she could have done something to have not deserved. What a shame. All those punishments that she got, and it's only now, like I say, 20 years later, that she realises, no, she did nothing wrong. They were just two very, very evil people. You know, that she was unfortunate enough to have been adopted, and not even adopted. And that's what I say, when they adopted her, they called her Esther Combs. And after she went on to start finding herself and some sort of normality, she did find her biological mother, who had Elsa when she was very young, and she was told that Elsa was going to a very loving family, you know, she'd have a really good life. So she was under the understanding that she'd done the right thing. So of course, when she found all this out, she was devastated, very guilty. And Esther found out that her real name, her birth name, was Elsa. So she has changed it back to Elsa Garcia, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I've called her Elsa throughout this, because I suppose you'd want to forget Esther, you know, and everything about that life. I don't know. Or would you eventually be able to embrace her as part of you and what you went through, and to show how strong you are now? I don't know, but she now knows it's not her fault. It never was. And yeah, it was just such a sad story that 20 years this went on for, you know, under so many people's noses. That's scary to me. That's actually scary. But unlike a lot of the stories I do, Elsa is alive. You know, she's getting on with her life. Like I say, she's got her own family. And, you know, which is actually quite a nice ending, because a lot of the stories I do obviously don't have that. So that's why I did want to do this story. I like to do occasionally ones that have got an ending to them, a nicer ending to them, and the best ending ever, knowing they'll never get out, ever. You know, these evil people that hid behind God to excuse their behaviour. Absolute disgrace, it really is. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me again. If you have got any stories you'd like me to look at for you, and like I say, I am getting started. I have got another one. I don't know if you know this one. It's the Casey Anthony. Do you know, everyone calls it that, the Casey Anthony case, and it shouldn't be. It should be the Kaylee Anthony case. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why on my next story. And you'll see why I've got a bit annoyed about that. But yeah, and I'll do that soon. I'm like I say, I'm sorry for the delay, the holidays and everything else, but my next one will be much sooner. Thank you to my new subscribers, and if there is anyone watching you'd like to subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Get my videos first. So yeah, I'll see you soon. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you. Bye bye.